Ken Trahan with Lenny Vangilder. It's our first NBC Bank Weekend Review, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 35 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana and the Florida Panhandle. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. It was a disastrous trip for the Saints to Philadelphia. Same thing for Tulane. Same stadium, same kind of results. Both teams basically got blown out. As for the Saints, the final score not indicative of the game. Philadelphia blew a couple of chances in the first half with turnovers. Second half dominated. Saints scored a touchdown on the final play of the game. So realistically, this was a blowout, Lenny.
It was, and not the type of game that we've really seen. Look, yeah, the Saints are 1-4, okay, and your record is, or your team is what your record says you are. Is that what Herm Edwards used to say, or some of those coaches? And it's coach speak, but it's true. But this is really the first time we've seen him get the doors blown off. Every other game up until this point, they've been there with an opportunity in the last couple of minutes to be able to do something. And this was clearly not the case. It was there in the first half. And, look, had you gotten that touchdown in the first series of the second half and taken the lead instead of having to settle for a field goal in a goal-to-go situation, maybe that changes things, okay? You did a lot of good things for, 30-some minutes in this game, and then all of a sudden I think that, the pace that Philadelphia plays at, yeah, they've slowed it down a little, but still, that defense was out on the field for 79 official snaps. That's not to mention the penalties that you could throw out there that puts the numbers in the 80s. You're moving into some territory there that you don't normally see. In fact, I think the number is like 6 times in a regulation game since 2000 that the Saints defense has been on the field for 80 or more snaps. So it's unusual to do that, and I think that is part of what you saw in the second half.
Yeah, just ineptitude on both sides of the ball. Your defense looks worse because your offense can't possess the ball. When your offense has it, you commit 4 turnovers, which is, again, probably the worst thing about this is the defense created 2 turnovers, and still you lose the turnover battle by 2, and you've got no shot on the road that way.
No, you really don't. And, the other thing that is concerning, you guys will talk about it tonight on Sports NOLA TV, 6 p.m., WHNO, shameless plug. The running game and the lack of the ability to defend the running game. A lot of people talking about pass rush, and that's understandable. You're not getting to the quarterback. But you have to be able to run, and you have to be able to at least slow down the run. You look at that Dallas game, Saints at least got over 100 yards rushing, and you threw out those first 2 plays when the Cowboys gashed the Saints for 60 yards. That was basically half of their output for the game. They were only 60 yards the rest of the way. Totally different story otherwise in the other 4 games, and certainly the case yesterday. And you look at the stats, the Saints are 29th in the league in rushing, and they're 30th in the league against the run. They're 32nd in the league. That would be last, by the way,
in defense.
In total defense. So that is a concern, and part of it is being able to get off the field.
It is. The investment in Max Unger supposedly would improve it, but then again, in defense of them, they were without key players again up front yesterday. Teron Armstead didn't play. And, of course, you got Jari Evans, who's still out. But it's part of the game because the core players have clearly aged. Marcus Colston had to leave the game injured. He's nowhere near where he used to be. Zach Strief has had his troubles this year. Drew Brees has had his troubles. And as I mentioned, Colston, Evans, look, you take those core guys, and it's obvious they're getting long in the tooth. And from the standpoint of young guys, they're young guys. They look good one week, maybe not so good the next.
Right. You take a guy, if you want to look at a silver lining from this game, Delvin Breaux with his first career interception, Willie Snead, guy they just picked up off the street, a rookie who's, still 22 years old and had the best game of his career. And, the wide receiving core, your 2 best players are both 22 years old right now, it would seem, if Colston is clearly aging in Cooks and Snead.
Yeah, well, I mean, that speaks volumes, though, about where you're at. Colston aging, and Coleman isn't what you thought he would be, and you don't have anything else. So clearly that continues to be a position problem, as does the offensive line with his injuries, the quarterback who's not 100%, a defense that can't make the stops when it needs to and has really basically no playmakers, despite the fact that Breaux made a play maybe he can be ultimately, and a backup punter who kicked a 13-yard punt. So other than that, it was all good.
Yeah, of course it was. That's just other than that. Yeah. How was the play anyway? Yes.
Exactly. As for Tulane, much the same result in the same place at Philadelphia and got whipped by Temple, and it was ugly. They competed in the first half. They surrendered in the second half. They did nothing well. Dropped another snap from center on a punt. Can't do anything on offense, and the defense finally just wore out. As we saw, that was a familiar pattern. We've seen this before. This is what happened against Georgia Tech and against Duke. Defense held on as long as it could, ultimately wore down.
Well, and you think, oh, it's Temple. This is a pretty good football team there. That team's undefeated, and they're definitely going to be in the hunt to win that division and play for the American Conference Championship. And, another week and another win, and they might find themselves in the top 25 next week. So, but it doesn't get any easier for Tulane. As we talked about last week, this 4-week gauntlet, they're not all undefeated anymore. Navy lost to Notre Dame. But Houston comes in undefeated, and they are ranked, and they'll be here Friday night.
They will indeed. Stephen Dunbar from Rummel, a good receiver for Houston who's made his mark. As for LSU, a solid victory over South Carolina. They ran the ball incredibly well, but they actually made some plays in the passing game, so that was perhaps the most encouraging thing.
I think so. And look, let me tell you, I was there Saturday. It was a totally different atmosphere than anything I've experienced in Tiger Stadium in terms of an LSU football game. And obviously we know the circumstances that led to this game being here, and our thoughts and prayers with everyone in South Carolina as they recover from the flooding. But it was a different atmosphere. And look, it would have been real easy for LSU to, I don't want to say get caught up in it, but just not have the effort that they needed to have, in that they handled the situation well. Leonard Fournette, 150-plus yards at 2.5 quarters. The guy behind him, Darius Geis, is pretty doggone good. He actually outrushed Fournette for the game. And, he gives you that second option. We haven't even mentioned Darrell Williams in there, but they can really, really run the football, but they don't have to run the football 100% of the time, as you mentioned, because they improve significantly in the passing game.
As I watched this, it was somewhat reminiscent of when the New Orleans Saints played home games in Baton Rouge in 2005. A kind of surreal atmosphere, less than half full, and Tiger Stadium not as menacing, but the football team, they were ready to play and took care of business. They do have to fix their special teams woes if they want to beat the better teams on the schedule.
Yeah. Give up a kick return for a touchdown, and the guy was practically untouched. By the way, it was the first time that guy had touched a football in a college game, and he went the distance with it. So, yeah, got to be better about that. Finally, you saw what happened. They went to just popping up and squibbing after that. It'll be interesting to see how they manage it this week against Florida. A huge test in Tiger Stadium Saturday night.
Pelicans signing Jerome Jordan to center because of their center woes and the injuries, and they get a little national publicity as well Monday night.
Chicago, in Chicago, watch it on NBA TV. A chance to see what this group is made of before you see them for real 15 days from now, because the regular season will be here before you know it.
Happens fast. High school football, of course, you can continue to follow all of our stories. Two prominent stories right now, St. Thomas Aquinas and their terrific season to date, and also a story on a great friend and colleague of mine, Kevin Shillings, who's an absolute treasure in Ascension Parish for high school sports, lovingly gave himself to high school sports for so many years, passed away on Sunday. And Kevin was a reporter for The Original and wrote stories for SportsNoah.com. These are the kind of people you come across in high school sports that make it so special. I lost Henry Rando, you and I both, earlier this year, a great friend of ours, and Kevin Shillings was that kind of guy and beloved by people.
Well, there are those people who just give everything they have to high school sports, and you're part of that small group out there that has such a passion for the game. And even when I saw some of the stories. In fact, getting back to the South Carolina story about people who were impacted. Maybe you didn't know them, but the fact is, when you share that same passion for high school sports, like so many of us do, any time you lose a member of that fraternity, it does hurt. And our thoughts and prayers with Kevin and his family.
First NBC Prep Showcase had the Battle of Covington this past week. St. Paul's and Covington will continue this weekend.
Yeah, going to Gentilly, if you will. The Battle of Gentilly. It'll be at Tad Gormley Stadium. Holy Cross Brother Martin should be a good one. 2 of the 4 teams in the Catholic League with 1 loss, and you really don't want to get that second loss at this point if you can help it. Rummel's sitting out there at 2-0 right now. Still 4 games to play, and you just want to stay at 1 loss in the hopes that somebody can knock off the Raiders. But It's been that kind of year in the Catholic League thus far.
Should be a very good game. Tune in to sportsnola.com. Saturday on radio, we'll have Jesuit Rumble at 6 p.m. on WGSO 990 a.m. Lenny, it's always a pleasure. Have a great week.
All right. We'll see you a little bit earlier later this week as we get ready for a Thursday night Saints-Falcons game in the Dome.
You got it. That's our first NBC Bank review of this past weekend, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 35 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great week, and God bless you.